Hi, I'm Dajana Yoakley. I'm a peaceful parenting coach and mom of three, and I am delighted to give you the latest science-backed research on child development, parenting, and to support you in showing up as the parent that you want to be. Welcome. Welcome, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today on the podcast. I'm really excited to have here with me Kirk Martin. Welcome, Kirk. So glad to have you here today.
Dajana, I am super psyched to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you. And let me introduce you a little bit to our audience before we get started into a juicy conversation about parenting, strong-willed kids, and all things kind of surrounding that. So CelebrateCalm.com, founder and Calm Parenting podcast host Kirk Martin has shown almost 1 million parents how to stop the yelling, defiance, power struggles with the most strong-willed children. And my audience really I think enjoys learning about strong-willed kids, big feelings, challenging behavior. This is something we talk about a lot on the show. So Kirk is known for very practical strategies and scripts as well, delivered with humor and compassion. And self-compassion is something we talk about a lot, so we can offer our kids compassion, but also playfulness and humor. So I love that you're integrating all of these key concepts that are really in alignment with my audience. So yeah, let's kick it off. Do you want to just start off with a little bit more on how you got started with this work, and then we can kind of take it from there, and the audience that you support?
So Dajana, our son came out of the womb with boxing gloves on, and I'm son of a former career military dad. So that was the whole my way or the highway. And I thought,
Yeah.
well, I'll just show this kid. And these strong-willed kids, you can't intimidate them. And
Yeah.
so I nearly ruined my relationship with Casey until I finally discovered the only person in life that I can control is myself. And the quickest way to change your child's behavior is to first control your own. So that kind of set us down this path with, and he had that like alphabet soup soup of labels with everything. And then the short story is we began inviting kids into our home. So the idea was instead of bringing them into a therapeutic office to work one-on-one, we'd have 8, 10, 12, 15 kids in our home. A lot of kids on the spectrum, strong-willed kids, adopted kids, and we put them in real life situations where they would melt down, where they would pick on each other. So we could teach them in real life situations, oh, this is how you handle frustration, because that's a core part of life is disappointment, frustration. And these are just really intense kids. So over the course of a decade, we had about 1,500 kids in our home. And then after that, we started speaking, and now podcasting is kind of like is what we love doing. So it's been about 25 years now. But the strong-willed kids, they just will change you so much, right? They're kind of like the best therapists because they will push buttons you didn't know you had, and they live with you 24 hours a day. So you never get a break. It's awesome.
Yes, I love that. They give you lots of exercise and practice to practice really growing and stretching as a person, right? I'd love for you to elaborate a little bit more on like so let's say a parent listening to this has a kid that's strong-willed or challenging, handful, whatever you want to call it. How can we help, first of all, parents reframe this child as a good kid having a hard time? What are there some like kind of frameworks or scripts or mantras, or have you seen help parents kind of overcome this like shift in mindset? Because I think if parents see the child as a bad kid, their own behavior results in things that don't really help. So
I know that's a good question, because I think if you talk to strong-willed kids, what they feel most is misunderstood. And so I think understanding their nature, right? So these are kids who they wake up in the morning and they have an agenda because they tend to picture things in their brains, and they're really intense kids and they want to carry things out. They're kind of like old souls. And so they have a vision for what they want to accomplish. They don't always have the tools. And so they get frustrated and then they melt down, and it's very intense for them. And these are kids who have a lot of energy. I like flipping the script a little bit. Like, we don't label the kids in school who just sit still all day as having energy deficient disorder, right? The kids who are just compliant and do what you say, I would call that compliance disorder, because if you're a people pleaser, you get hurt in life. But these are kids who have an agenda. They like to touch the hot stove. And that's hard because they're never going to do things the way that you want them done because they value their autonomy and independence more than they care about consequences. And that's why consequences don't work. It's like, I don't care. You can take away my things, don't take away my
Yeah.
voice, my ability to try to do it the hard way and learn from that. And so when you start to see it, you can work with their nature instead of trying to be like, why can't you just do it my way? And so
Uh-huh.
what that brings up is you've seen, because you've got 3 kids, is we have control issues, right?
Mhm.
I want it done a certain way. Well, there's not just one way to do it, and your
Yeah.
stronger kids want to figure it out on their own. And if we could really switch it around, this is what we want. We want independent kids who take initiative, who have a lot of energy, who do things creatively and differently. It just runs into our own control issues. And then I think, Diana, the other thing for parents is we have a lot of anxiety about our kids because
Mhm.
we see from preschool, oh, your daughter can't sit still in circle time. Now we're like, oh my gosh, how is she going to be successful? She's not following directions. I'm like, she's 4. Like, she you don't have to sit still in a circle when you're 30 to be successful. But our
Mhm.
anxiety, and then you get to middle, if you have a middle school age boy, you guarantee that kid all he does is sit in a hoodie sweatshirt, same hoodie sweatshirt for like 18 straight days,
Oh my gosh, yes,
and
the
plays
same
video
sweater.
games, right? And then
They
you
want to
project,
play if I
yes,
let them, yeah.
yeah, of course. And you think, who is going to marry this child? Who will ever hire this child? And then we get into that kind of negative cycle.
Yeah, yeah. And what you're addressing really is the parents' discomfort. The parents are uncomfortable. And of course, this leads to like our own inability to self-regulate and stay calm when kids are pushing us. But I love this discussion about the kid, like you said, the kid tries to do this thing that they haven't their mindset to, but their skills aren't there yet. So they get frustrated. So they're uncomfortable in their body. But then also the parent has this anxious like loop of thoughts and worries and trying to stay in control, which if they don't feel soothed themselves, they also feel uncomfortable. So I often see like both parent and child are uncomfortable, and unconsciously the parent tries to feel better just for themselves and suppress the kid's emotion. And I do this myself too sometimes when it's so unconscious. We almost ask the kid to do the harder work in the relationship and
Mhm.
the interaction. You need to self-soothe while I self-regulate by controlling the situation. Whereas, the kid doesn't have a fully developed prefrontal cortex. We do. And yes, it's hard for us too. But I mean, knowing all that, I would rather, as the parent, be more uncomfortable with my emotions in the moment than the child because they have nobody else to depend on. I at least have a fully developed prefrontal cortex, even though if it's not fully linked to my like amygdala, it's not maybe ideally like self-regulating me, but I have a better chance of staying calmer. I have more resources than the kid does. And so I need to prioritize co-regulation when they're frustrated rather than seeking control to self-soothe myself first, over soothing them. I don't know. Yeah. What thoughts do you have about that?
Oh my gosh, that's beautiful. That is such good insight of, and I want to reframe it to, I believe
Yeah.
that the meltdowns are huge opportunities. So
Yeah.
a couple things for us as parents, and I like simple things. So 2 things I begin trying this week is just body posture. When there's chaos in the living room, sit. Just go and sit in it without trying to fix it. Like that's enough homework for a
Yeah.
week. Like walk into a situation, sit, because when I sit, it changes my tone of voice. Like when I walk into a
Mhm.
room and I'm standing up, I want to fix things. You need to stop that. When I go in and sit, I guarantee you, you have so much more control over your kids by controlling yourself, your emotions, your body posture. It's almost impossible to yell when you're sitting down. And so you tend to take
I love that.
we're big fans of even matter of fact tone. So I walk into a room, siblings are fighting rather than coming in and creating my own drama. you know what? I give you guys all these toys and these video games. You can't even play well for 20 minutes. You go to your room. Well, I just created more drama. But if I walked into that room and sat, I guarantee if you lay on the floor, your kids will stop fighting and they'll look at you like, what's mom, what's dad doing lying on the floor? Now I get to teach because discipline literally means to teach. And so the
Mhm.
provoking child, which is usually the strong-willed child, the ADHD kid who needs brain stimulation, now I can address him or her and say, hey, I know what's going on in here. You got bored because you hate being bored because you have this great brain. It's always thinking of ideas and you get bored. So you poked your sister because you know she's going to react. And then I'm going to react. And then the other spouse is going to react. So one kid, by even looking at his sister, got three people to react. And I can address that child and say, that is brilliant. You
Mhm.
have insight into human nature. What you're looking for is intense emotional engagement. I apologize because I always give it to you when you do something negative. But here's why that's not going to work for you, because when you poke your sister, do that, you lose your stuff. But two things I know about you. You've got a big heart, because our kids, strong-willed kids, have big hearts, just not toward their parents. And they oftentimes love money. They're entrepreneurs. So I can say, hey, I've got to go get started on dinner. If you want to come join me, I bet we could brainstorm 3 different ways to earn some money in this neighborhood. And with that, you could give some of that to kids with cancer. So what I'm doing is, instead of, would you please stop that? Stop that
Mhm.
or else. Hey, I know why you're doing this. I'm the grown up. So here's another option for you that only
Mhm.
has upside. And then I
Mhm.
can address the reactive child and say, every time you react to your brother, you just give him complete power over you, and you're not powerless. So that situation, rather than drama, go to your room, which didn't teach them anything. To
Yeah.
your point,
Yeah.
it's like, go away from me because you're kind of annoying. Right. And I
You're
get that.
creating discomfort in me.
Yeah, there's no judgment. I get that. But over
Yeah.
time, we can use this as an opportunity. One, the other thing I like about this even matter of fact tone is it calms yourself,
Yeah.
because when I just start talking like this, I'm just reading the situation. But as soon as my voice gets like this, it's why I also don't like, and I hope this doesn't offend anybody. We've gone from like authoritarian, you guys better stop that or else, to,
Mhm.
well, guys, let's talk about our feelings, and let's, the really sweet tone sounds unstable to strong-willed kids. I don't know if
Mhm.
that makes sense, but it's kind of like, I don't really know what to do right now. I'm appealing to you to please
Yeah.
stop. So the even matter of fact tone says, oh, I've seen this before. This is what siblings do. Oh,
Mhm.
you're melting down right now? Of course you are, because you planned something. It didn't go the way you wanted. Of course you'd be frustrated.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're speaking to the feelings of the children um, to start. Like, I understand, like, this behavior is coming from a feeling. And I love how you're saying, like, the tone. I think the idea behind it is like to create a sense of, for the child to experience you as somebody that's confident and
Right.
also empathic and compassionate, but also in control of yourself, right? Because
Yeah.
if we go in there like, the child looks at us, they're like, she's just as out of control as I feel. This is not going to get us anywhere, right? So having that firmness, I think, creates a sense of safety and
Yeah.
stability. And I love empathy as well, and the soft tone. And there's different, I think it depends on what the emotion is that the child is feeling.
Right.
I think with an angry child, it's better to go in with like validating, but in a very like, yeah, kind of more neutral, like, but yeah, I get it. Whereas with maybe a child that's already crying, maybe more of that empathy to welcome more tears. As anger is like the shield protecting those more vulnerable emotions. So I think we can kind of play around with that in
Right.
ourselves as parents, and figure out. And also, like you said, with strong-willed kids, highly sensitive kids, sometimes too much of that empathy up front, the softness, they push it away. Stop talking. Go away.
Yeah.
I don't want you here.
It
Because
sounds
it's too
almost,
much. Like, yeah, go ahead.
it sounds almost condescending at times
Yeah,
when it's too. So I'll give you an example. And again, you have to know your kids. And I encourage
yeah,
parents, try different things and see what resonates, because
yeah,
some kids need like hugs, cuddles.
yeah.
I get it, honey. But let's take a typical strong-willed kid, let's say a boy, it could be a girl, comes home from school, makes a paper airplane, flies it. The airplane doesn't fly the way they want. Well, the strong-willed child, look, most kids are going to be like, oh, darn, didn't fly right. I'll make another. The strong-willed child's going to crumple up the plane. Stupid airplane. I'm stupid. And most good moms and dads come into the room. Oh, honey, that was a good airplane. And the child's going to be like, duh, if it were a good airplane, it would have flown right. So here's where I use intensity with intense kids. I come in the room and say,
Yeah.
oh, I'd be frustrated too. All day at
Yeah.
school, you were picturing that airplane. You weren't even paying attention in class. I'm kidding, but that's probably true with the ADD kids. But so they get that I get them. All day long, you were picturing this. You flew it. It didn't fly right. That's frustrating. See,
Mm-hmm.
that validation is so calming, because
Yeah.
you're not doing the guy thing with the wife, which is, oh, honey, there's no need to be upset. You're
Right.
just overreacting. Instead, it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, now I add to that and say, you know what? I need to go to the bathroom. I'm going to go grab a drink. When I get back, let's figure out how to do this differently. And one thing that's really important for these kids when they're upset is space
Mm.
and no eye contact, because we often stand over our kids and it's almost like you need to calm down now. Well, when they get upset like that, there is a deep shame impulse in there.
Yeah.
They're embarrassed. Nobody likes to be watched when they're
Yeah.
melting down and struggling.
Mm-hmm.
So when I
Mm-hmm.
remove myself to go get water, a glass of water, it gives them time to kind of process that without
Mm-hmm.
an adult watching them. And
Yeah.
then when I come back, I move to problem solving, because sometimes, right, you have to use wit. Sometimes it's really good to just talk about your feelings and emotions. Sometimes what strong-willed kids are like, yeah, I already know my feelings, freaking disappointed. What I need is someone to show me,
Yeah.
sorry for the
Mm-hmm.
language, but the
Right.
intensity is really important
Yes.
there. What I need is
Mm-hmm.
for someone to show me how to deal with my frustration, not because talking sometimes with strong-willed kids and when people are, it's annoying and it makes them more
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know. I love the intensity thing. Especially with anger and frustration, because it creates a sense of, instead of like feeling like this, it's like, I get it. They feel understood, and they feel like they're not, they feel alone in their frustration. And when we come side by side and we're like, makes perfect sense. Yeah. And the intensity of our tone in our voice matches that, they totally feel like, oh, phew, like I'm not, they don't, the shame really dissolves, because shame is like, I'm all alone, I'm rejected, something's wrong with me, I am a bad person, right? But when we're like, no, you're not a bad person, like it makes sense. If I was in your shoes, I would have felt the same way. No wonder.
Ooh,
Even though this big emotion is happening, it's not comfortable, but it makes perfect sense. How human of you. We
ooh.
dismantle that shame. And now, like you said, they can process it. And then the thinking brain comes back online like, okay, but I'm still frustrated. I'm trying to make this plain. And I don't, they don't have the skills maybe. And so how can we help them build the skills, like you said?
You have so much good insight there. Like that whole idea of normalizing it,
Yeah.
right? Because you brought that up of like their discomfort makes us uncomfortable. And when you start to normalize, it's like kids in line. Like they're going to lie. Impulsive kids do things impulsively, and then they know, uh-oh, I broke the lamp. I did something I'm not supposed to. Now
Hmm.
they lie. And so
Yeah.
I don't excuse it, but I'm like, well, of course they lied. And
Yeah.
so now, rather than creating all this drama of like, this is an integrity issue and we need to,
Yeah.
it's like, no, you had an impulse control issue and you
Yeah.
lied. And so I think I just did a podcast on this of, I want to make it easy for kids to tell us the truth,
Yeah.
because parents are always like, oh, this is a trust issue. And I'm like, absolutely, but they don't trust you, because
Yeah.
every time they do tell you the truth, I can't believe that you did that. Well, I'm going to start hiding things. So
Yeah.
to your point, we have so much power simply by controlling ourselves. When I
Yeah.
control my response to them, well, they stop lying. And I would actually encourage, this is a weird thing, practice. Have your kids practice, physically practice. I want you to come into the room and tell me something you did wrong. I will then practice not freaking out, lecturing
Yeah.
you, and having that disappointed look. So you physically practice the child coming and say,
Mm-hmm.
"Hey, mom, dad, I didn't do my assignment. I didn't brush my teeth." Yeah, I knew that. Okay, so what are we going to do differently? And
Mm-hmm.
when you begin practicing these things, it gets so much easier. And now there's not like all this unspoken feelings and drama. It's like, yeah, I wake as a parent of a strong-willed child, I would wake up every morning and say, I expect there to be 5, 6, or 7 situations today in which my child lies, messes up, melts down, picks on the sibling, and refuses to eat, go to bed, and do homework. And if that's your baseline, now you're like, I can't believe this. You're like, yeah, I was kind of waiting for this. Now I only had 4 power
Yes.
struggles today instead of 7. Pretty easy day as a parent.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And I think that's such a good point about um, as often the kids themselves have the same problem that the parents have. The element of surprise, the feeling of frustration surprises them, and it's so
Mm.
intense, all of a sudden it's like they just get angry. But the same is happening with the parent, like you said. I mean, it would happen to any one of us. Like, you're thinking it's going to be a great day, I just did my gratitude practice, my kids are going to be, I did morning hugs with everybody, I'm hoping the siblings get along so lovely today, and then a fight breaks out at the breakfast table, and it's like you're so surprised, right? Like, oh, but I expected them to behave this way, they're behaving this way. And the distinction there is like frustration. And now you start to feel these feelings. So I love how you can kind of reset the expectation. Okay, I live with children, which means that children will be childish. That is what they are, is children. I live with preteens. Well, I know that preteens have a lot of hormonal changes and a lot of growth in their brain development. So they're going to be more irritable. And or I'm maybe helping my strong-willed child like assert themselves, practicing skills of assertion without attacking somebody. Sometimes they're going to mess it up. Sometimes they're going to get it wrong. I know my kid struggles with this. I know they struggle with aggression. So they're probably going to be aggressive today. Like, why am I expecting such a big distinction between reality and for the time being? And doesn't mean we accept it. It doesn't mean we say like, I just give up. It's always going to be bad. Every day, every minute can be a fight. I'm powerless. There's a difference between, I think, setting realistic expectations and then having goals and strategies of like, what can we do to build skills to support ourselves versus, realizing, yeah, it is bad. And then, well, I guess I can't change it anyway.
Yeah, and it's not excusing it. It's just like you said with a teenager. What switched for me, like when our son was a teenager, was
Yeah.
from, well, I expect him to always be respectful and have a good attitude. Well, that's just
Yeah.
dumb. It's not happening. So because one time, Diane, he came to me and I said, you can't talk to me like that. And his response was, just did. And I was like, I want to murder you, right? Like my dad. And so you're going to wrestle with all these things. Like our parents never put up with this. We would have never done that.
Mhm.
So all those things, are we letting the child get away with things? Let me give you a quick example. So Casey, preteen, comes at me with attitude. Typical response, you're not going to talk to me like that, young man. And that's what our parents did, which is, in a sense, I'm shutting you down
Mhm.
because you can't talk to me like that. Well, I'm a grown adult. You can talk however you want. Now, it's not going to work well for you. So, what I did,
Mhm.
I began stepping back and just taking like 5 seconds before I responded to him. And one day I said, hey, Case, you know what I've noticed? Like the last 43 times you've talked to me like that. Now, parents of strong-willed kids will get that. Parents of
Yeah.
compliant kids are
Yeah.
like, you should have shut that down after 2 times. I'm like, you've never had one of these kids. So
Yeah.
I say it in jest, but also true. Last 43 times you've talked to me like that. What I've noticed is you are anxious, frustrated, or hungry. So now I'm teaching, hey, because the other one is, hey, you're just a jerk. And if you continue
Yeah.
to be a jerk, you're going to lose all your video games. Well, that doesn't end, like there's no teaching there.
Yeah.
Hey, I know
Yeah.
what's going on because I'm the grown up. I don't take it personally. That's a that's a big one for me. I'm a grown
Yeah.
adult. I know, but they're talking. It can look, I differ on this. I don't believe it can be disrespect unless I choose to
Yeah.
take it as disrespect, right? I'm not
Yeah.
excusing like let kids call you the B word. No, I severe consequence for that. Not, but when he's got attitude and I say, hey, it's one of these three things. You may continue to talk to me like that. It's just not going to end well for you. It just doesn't work well in life. See, there's no energy to that. It's an assumed close. You know that doesn't work. But if you want to get some chips, I'll grab some salsa. I'll meet you out on the deck. I'll help you with whatever you're struggling with. So the reason I like this,
Mhm.
one of our phrases is, or principles is motion changes emotion. So movement.
Mm.
I don't go toe
Yeah.
to toe with an upset or disrespectful child because you're just going to look at their faces and their faces are going to bother you, right? Their little facial expressions, wipe that
Yeah. Yeah.
smirk off. So instead, it's why don't you go grab the chips? I gave him a job to do, something he's in control of in that moment of grabbing the chips. I grab the salsa. I meet you somewhere else. And there's an invitation to be with me. And what I'm communicating is, hey, when your world is out of control, mine's not. I can handle you at your worst rather than go to your room until you can talk to me respectfully, which is fine. I'd rather go to, hey, something's going on with you. Hey, teenage daughter, you and your girlfriends at school, there was some drama going on. So let's meet in a different place. I love Diana. I love with older kids going for a drive. A weird one
Oh
is
yeah.
take them out late at night, like 9 o'clock on a weeknight, and go eat a snack out at some restaurant, a wings place. They will open up to you because when you're driving next to them, there's no eye contact. When it's dark, they feel a little bit more safe. And when they're
Hmm.
tired, they tend to be more vulnerable. So my son comes out, and now I can say, hey, I'm curious because I love that phrase. What was going on back there? Because you were using
Mm.
attitude that doesn't work well for you. And I just want to help you out with, well, Dad. And then he would open up. And now I'm
Yeah.
problem solving and saying, hey, next time this happens, why don't we have a code word like chips and salsa instead of you coming and calling me a name, which is never going to work well for you? So,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
so I'll wrap that up. So these moments, as annoying as they are huge opportunities because I taught my
Hmm.
son, here are your three triggers in life. And he's 31 now.
Yeah.
Those are still his triggers. But now
Yeah.
he can proactively know, and he's married and tells what, hey, I'm really anxious, or I didn't get my workout in, so I'm kind of a jerk and I'm hungry. He can manage that himself because
Hmm.
we taught him that.
I love that. And it's through the connection that we can only teach, right? Because
Hmm.
humans are wired to follow the influence of those that they feel connected to. So I love the like motion, movement really dissipates some of the anger too, the somatics of it.
Mhm.
So like giving them an assignment kind of gives them like their body some space to move. And then also kind of tabling it for a little bit maybe, and then like bringing the discussion back up later when you do feel connected if it's not right in that moment. But yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. And reflecting back to them what you're seeing are maybe things that are ticking them off to start. Because when they're, to them, it might just feel like random, but we know that when kids have challenging behavior, there's a trigger, just like when parents lose it, there's a trigger. And the first place to start, like self-regulation, is to figure out what is triggering you. It's specific things. There's a pattern of them, similar things popping up over and over. So the same thing is happening with kids that are having a lot of meltdowns. There's a trigger, and it could be food, hunger, or it could be frustration. It could be a big emotion.
Anxiety is a big one, right? Like that's a
Yeah,
huge one for
anxiety.
little kids. So then to be able to identify it and say, hey, I've
Yeah.
noticed in these situations, oh, when you get
Hmm.
anxious, yeah, you don't want to go to new places because there's all these unknowns. Makes total sense to me. Now we're still
Yeah.
going to go, but I want you to
Yeah.
know that stomach upset, perfectly normal. And so
Yeah.
for the rest of their lives, when their stomach's upset doing something new, it's not like, oh my gosh, I have anxiety. It's like, oh yeah, that's my old friend anxiety. It's going to come
Mm-hmm.
visit, warn me that something new's happening, but I can deal with
Mm-hmm.
it. And so now you're kind
Mm-hmm.
of building resilience of like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, of course you should feel anxious. You're going to some place you've never been. When I have to go do a presentation at the office, my stomach gets upset because I don't know how it's going to go. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
comes like to your words, there's connection there, there's
Yeah.
teaching there. And so it's not easy, but it's a lot easier than reacting and yelling and everybody being upset.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And like you said, with strong-willed kids, punishment, threats, consequences don't really work. I mean, you can try them. They might work when they're little, but they get way less effective when they're older, and they don't even really work when they're little because, you know, it's related to the nervous system too, and you could break the child's spirit, but we don't want to do that. No, but no parent wants to do that with intention, right? So like you can be extreme about it and like break their spirit. And spank them or whatever, right? Like, but even all of that's going to backfire. But the only other way is like to really build that connection, right? Like, yes, it's frustrating.
Mhm.
Yes, it's overwhelming. It's a handful because it's asking you. Why it's so hard is because it's asking you to grow some skills yourself as a parent, which is really the hardest job in parenting, right? Like
Oh my
our
gosh,
own inner work.
we're not really raising kids. We're growing up ourselves while we're doing this. And
Yeah.
that's the beautiful part about relationships. Relationships are
Yeah.
the purpose is not happiness, right? Like in a marriage, it's the union of two imperfect people with all kinds of
Mhm.
childhood issues and flaws. And they're like, hey, let's reproduce some other flawed, imperfect people with a mix of our strengths and weaknesses, shove us into a home. And now we have financial instability and all kinds of issues. So it's supposed to be hard. And so that's
Mhm.
one of the things we do on the podcast a lot is to let them know your family's normal.
Yeah.
If you're having power struggles over all these issues, you're perfectly normal. It's a chance for everybody to grow, teach your kids some skills, and then grow up yourself. And so we do a lot, like one of my favorite things is to get rid of the behavior chart. I
Yeah.
don't mind well, I do mind them because they don't work, right? Because you're measuring outward behavior. I'd rather have a trigger chart or a trigger board in the home and
Uh-huh.
teach the kids, hey, here's my trigger. When you guys are late, see, when I was a
Yeah.
kid, my career military dad yelled at me if we were late. So now when you're late, it triggers me. I come in and I rush you. Come on, gotta go, gotta go. And have you noticed you guys move more slowly? And so I'm teaching them about life.
Yeah.
Here's your trigger, son, daughter. Here's yours. When plans change at the last minute, man, that really triggers you. So here are two or three different things you can do for the rest of your life when plans change, because
Mm-hmm.
they will. And it's
Mm-hmm.
so now instead of just thinking about my job is to control my child's behavior, it is my job is to teach my kids how to manage the difficulties in life. And so then it
Mm-hmm.
becomes, oh, you're experiencing that? Good. Let's forget about homework for the night, right? Because sometimes you just have to ditch the homework and say, I'd rather teach you life skills right now than just do an
Mm-hmm.
assignment. I'm not saying don't do
Yeah.
homework, but don't worry about it. It's
Yeah.
not that
Yeah.
important, moms and dads.
Yeah, yeah. And it really gives permission for parents to be imperfect, know that we're on like this journey with our kids side by side. And yes, like we're still the parents. The kids are not in charge. Like we're the ones that are older and we brought them into the world, we brought them into our life. But at the same time, we don't have to have it all figured out. We just have to know a little bit more about where we're going than they do. And it's like a messy middle. Like being in the messy middle, there's something delightful about that too, because I think the joy is really, again, back to the connection. Like, even if it's messy, if you're doing it with people that you feel connected to, that sometimes drive you crazy, if you know how to reconnect and repair, you still keep like rowing in the same direction, right? Like, so
Yeah.
yeah,
And
I love that.
And Dinah, they get to see you change. Like if you were to
Yeah.
ask our grown son what he remembers about childhood, like what were the important life lessons your dad taught you or your mom? He would just say,
Yeah.
I watched my dad. My dad was his dad because he knew his grandpa. And he said he went from being his dad to being in control of himself and connected.
Yeah.
So that was his lecture,
Yeah.
was we get to live this out. And it's not like there are any secrets, right? Like you don't
Yeah.
have to tell your kids your childhood trauma, but like they already know that you're anxious. They already know all of your
They can
triggers,
see
right?
it. They're living
They can,
the results of
so it's
it.
not like, Mom, Dad, we never realized that you didn't like being late, like they, or messes. Like I'm
Yeah.
working on a podcast right now. I was writing it before we got on here about messes because it triggers so much stuff inside of us, right? Like, are my kids going to grow up to be hoarders or a slob? Will I have failed? My mother's home
Yeah.
was completely clean. Am I doing something wrong? And so, in that, man, there's just so much growth that happens. So, be
Hmm.
kind to yourself, moms and dads, and your
Yeah.
kids. They're just, look, one more thing. I know we'll probably have to go, but like,
Yeah.
parents are always like, well, when is my toddler going to learn? Dads do this self-discipline. I'm like, a toddler's job is to make messes and ruin your agenda. And your teenagers are going through the teenage years for the first time.
Yeah.
They've all these hormones surging and all this social stuff going on. They don't know what they're doing. We're expecting them to act like 35-year-olds and they're 12. Like they're just
Yeah.
dopey
Yeah.
kids in a hoodie, right? Sitting
Yeah.
in
Yeah. Yeah.
there. So,
Yeah.
so teach, relax a little bit. You're good. Look, if you're listening to a parenting podcast, you're a good parent, right? So
Yeah.
you're listening to
I love that.
Diane's podcast. Automatically, you're an intentional good parent. So
Yeah.
relax. You
Yeah.
guys are doing a good job.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. You're learning, you're growing. You don't have to be perfect. And your kids don't need to see you perfect either. They just need to see you uh present, mindful, and you know, in it. They want to see you show up and do the best that you can. That's what they're learning. They don't always remember what we say, but they always remember what we um made them feel like, right? So they're watching us and then they feel a certain way about it. And that's really the emotional memories is what they're really carrying on. And memory, it's so interesting, like memories, like they update like every year, like your memories consolidate and update. And it's these positive emotional memories and even the negative triggers. That's kind of what our kids are taking with us. So yeah, I think if we can focus on minimizing the harmful moments and maximizing the connection, it
Absolutely.
balances itself out and it washes out on the positive
Absolutely.
eventually. So yeah,
It's good
appreciate you
perspective.
sharing with us so much great information. I love the scripting and really practical application. And would you share a little bit about where people can find out more about you? I think I did mention in the bio, but if you could wrap up with that, that'd be great.
Just if you would look up the Calm Parenting podcast, we're on all the
Uh-huh.
platforms, and we try to make the episodes like 22 minutes long, give you one particular insight, a few strategies and scripts every week,
Yeah,
and then we kind of just build on these skills. So, but
I love that.
keep up the good work, Diana. This is like you're really good. You ask great questions. You have such good insight. So I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you for letting me pick your brain and gather more wisdom for our audience.
Anytime.
So appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Okay.